was thinking, you know, she has this baby, but then she has to walk him through his life. 30 years before he even really begins his ministry, and I'm just wondering how that went. I have to wonder, I have 2 boys and 3 girls. My 2 oldest are boys, big hairy-legged dudes, you know. And, you know, I'm just wondering, like, my oldest was the one, every gray hair on my head and every wrinkle on my face is from that child. Like, I remember just thinking, he's going to go to prison, you know. He's going to end up in prison. I remember one time I smelled this smell from around my refrigerator, and I opened the door, and he had spray painted the inside silver. It was just like, you know, yeah. I wondered if Jesus ever did that. I mean, did he ever just feel creative, you know? Just that's a bad thing, you know? I could just see him going, I just feel like I'm going to create something. But back to Mary. Okay. But there were undoubtedly sweet times of joy between her and her son Jesus. But then there had to be heartache times too, not understanding his messiahship. It was not like she envisioned. You know, I'm sure she had an idea of how it was supposed to look, and then the reality of it looked so different. Seeing him in those early ministry years, wandering and not having a place to lay his head, seeing people in authority challenge and reject him, that had to break a mother's heart. And I was thinking about us as women, have you ever experienced that in your family or in your ministry or your job where you had a wonderful expectation? Your heart was so full of hope, and then it just didn't turn out like you thought. What do we do? What do we do when we didn't get the life that we expected? What do we do when we didn't get the marriage that we expected? When it didn't look like what we dreamed about? What do we do when our children grieve our hearts instead of bringing us joy? What do we do? I was thinking that, having an expectant heart. Even though it was not what Mary had envisioned, this is the part that just thrills my heart, it was everything that God ordained. It was everything our sovereign God ordained. He was weaving a plan for his glory and for our good, and in your situations, he is doing exactly the same thing. He is God. Now, I love Corrie ten Boom. Y'all familiar with Corrie, right? Yes. I love her. I love her story. I read every book that she ever wrote and just watched The Hiding Place, I don't know how many times, but her life just so inspired me. And she was this older woman, and her family hid the Jews in her home during World War II, and they got caught hiding these Jews, and she was put in several prison camps. Ravensbrück was the worst, and she was there and lost her whole family. Everyone that was there with her died. But you know, it's funny because I just so love her, and she so challenges me. And I think it was my 43rd birthday. Everybody had gone to bed, and I found this DVD of her sharing her testimony. It was something that somebody had recorded. It was a movie of her, and I remember sitting cross-legged on the couch in my Eeyore pajamas, and I'm watching Corrie share the power of God and how he met her in that dark place, and tears are just pouring down my cheeks, because this is what I'm thinking. She's gone on to be with in glory, right? She's gone on to be with the Lord. Who are the Corrie ten Booms of our generation? Who's going to walk that way through their trials? I mean, it just broke my heart. So my poor unsuspecting husband was up in his bed reading Truck Trader magazine, and I'm kind of passionate anyway, and I come up in my Eeyore pajamas, I sit cross-legged on the bed, and I'm just like, who will be the next Corrie ten Boom? I will be, you know. I was just like lit up, and he's just looking at me like, oh my goodness, you know. So then the next day, all the kids are screaming through the house. We had about 5 neighborhood kids running through the house, plus my 5, and it was just insane. I had PMS and cramps, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table going, oh, I can't take this. And he just quietly says from his desk, and you want to be Corrie ten Boom. So he calls me Corrie 6 Boom. Says I have a few booms to go. But I love her because, ladies, we need to be believing women who walk through our trials in a way that brings glory to his name, that there's hope on our face, even if tears are pouring down our cheeks. I do not get what's swirling around me, but I know him. Believing women walk different. Corrie, I found a book by her. It was called Corrie's Christmas Memories, and I hadn't read that one, so I was real excited to kind of look into that and read about her childhood Christmases, and it was so sweet. But then there came this one entry where it talked about her Christmas when she was in Ravensbrück. And her sister Betsy, who had been with her entire life, they were both single, never married, best friends, had just died in Ravensbrück. And Corrie said she was feeling so alone, And she said the soldiers at that camp were putting these gnarled trees between the barracks as mock Christmas trees, and they were throwing the dead bodies of the prisoners under those trees. Can you imagine? And she said she felt like God could not even see her in that dark place. Lord, why am I here? God, why do you have me in this horrible place? And she said all of a sudden she heard this little voice going, Mama, Mama, Mama. And it puzzled her because in that part of the camp there was no children, and it sounded like a very childlike voice. And so she kind of went to try to figure out what this was. And she came around the corner, and in this bed was this young, she called her a feeble-minded girl. And the soldiers had been doing experiments, the surgeons, on her body. And she was cut up all over, and they had just put like toilet paper over the wounds. So she was completely infected. Mama, Mama. And Corey said, all of a sudden I knew why God had me in that place. Because she wrapped that young girl in her arms. And before that girl slipped into eternity, she was able to tell her about a God who loves her, who was enough for her, an Abba Father Daddy who loved her. You know what, ladies, that wrecked me. Because sometimes we are in a dark place in our lives. And I just want to say this as gently as I can, because I know, I've been through some heartaches myself in dark, dark places. But sometimes we get so caught up in the darkness of our place, we forget to say, God, gee, why do you have me here? What are you trying to work for your name's sake with me in this pit? Look around my pit. Is there someone I can be hope and light to? We need to lift up our eyes and walk as believing women, even in our heartaches. I wrote this down, expectant living. There are things worth putting our expectations in, expecting that His plans, with the anticipation of a child, that we can trust that our Abba, Daddy, my daddy, is working something for His glory and for our good. I can put my expectation in that. Because you know what? The logistics can really change in our lives, can't they? Boy, you know, one day can just turn your life on end. One phone call can turn your life upside down. We really can't put our expectations, but I can put my hope and my heart in the hands of my Abba Father Daddy and say, I trust you, and be an expectant woman. Can you?